Ah, dancing in the middle of World War I. How romantic.
These people are just swaying.
Okay, fine. Then how do the Amazons dance?
I may as well teach you how to dance, you poor thing.
No one was asking you, Steve. She just said that this wasn't dancing. Why would you teach her how to dance? Doesn't she want to show us what dancing is?
They don't know how to dance.
Right, you already said that like 5 lines ago. So what is it then? What is dancing? No, stop. Ugh. Stop kissing! You've evolved past it. You already said that in the boat scene. Come on, Wonder Woman script. You used the rule of 3s. You set it up.
These people are just swaying.
You reinforced it.
They don't know how to dance.
And then, what? There's no payoff? Has no one in this movie ever written a joke before? It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. That trick is so old. Internet, welcome to Film Theory, where I like to say we're equal opportunity movie ruiners. And on that note, today we're talking Wonder Woman, the highest grossing DC movie to date and the one that everyone is saying is the best one ever. Huzzah! But hold on to your invisible airplane there, Diana. I've got a few nits to pick with your movie. And don't get me wrong, a comic book superhero movie directed by a woman starring a woman is awesome and long overdue. I don't have any issue with any of that. My issue is actually with the man of the movie. Good old Zack Snyder, aka Mr. I Got a Story by credit for Wonder Woman, who I'm taking to task today. Zack, I'm gonna level with you now. I'm not getting paid millions to write movies, but I do know a couple of things from watching them. Like starting a movie with a flashback into a photo, followed by a flashback into a history book, does not make the movie the next Inception. It makes it pretty heavy on exposition. Or how about introducing the marksman and then having him do nothing. I mean, seriously, nothing. He's given multiple opportunities to shoot, or learn how to shoot, or show that he has any sort of character arc in any fashion, and then just nothing. Even the moral of the movie.
It's not about deserve, it's about what you believe.
The truth is what you believe? What does that even mean? Straight talk, Wonder Woman, you're gonna have some trouble defending that philosophy when Hitler rolls into town in like 15 years. I don't think many people want the truth to be what he believes. Long story short, watching this movie, for as much as I enjoyed it, just made me want to run a channel like CinemaSins every once in a while. But what I'm getting at today isn't about the philosophy of Wonder Woman, or how vague her power set is, or even how a blue silk dress is able to support a full-on sword, let alone Wonder Woman walking with it. No, Internet, my issue today is one that is far worse than any of that, because it is so basic that it's unforgivable, even in a totally fictional movie. According to the way this movie is written, Diana and Steve would never have participated in World War I. They wouldn't have saved the Armistice Deal, and they wouldn't have saved thousands of lives from Dr. Poison. In fact, Wonder Woman would have never even made it into the war in the first place. And I know you're thinking it's because of some magical physics thing or some existential conflict, or it's something I've completely manufactured for the purposes of clickbait, but it is literally because their boat was too slow. That's right, the entire payoff of this movie, everything after they leave the island, would have never happened because this would have never made it from here to London in time. Don't believe me? Well, stick around because we're about to unravel the entire logic of Wonder Woman because Zack flippin' Snyder failed 4th grade geography. Let's do this. As a quick recap, Steve Trevor crash lands off the coast of the Amazon island of Themyscira and gets saved by Diana, aka Wonder Woman. Then the two of them set sail for England to deliver Dr. Poison's secret notebook back to the British and thus end World War I. Huzzah! They get on a sailboat, they have a super awkward conversation about sleeping together because apparently any humor that revolves around a man and a woman always has to be about sex, and then they fall asleep. After that, we have a different scene that isn't them, and then poof! They're pulling right up to London the next day. They have no extra food or water that we see, you never see a sailing montage, and Diana wakes up in the same position you see her fall asleep in, so we know based on movie logic that this is supposed to be the next day, and that they made this whole trip overnight. But just where did they come from? from. Themyscira is, unsurprisingly, not a real place, but we do have plenty of clues about where it might be. The architecture on the island looks like ancient Greece, which isn't all that surprising. Wonder Woman's whole origin is based on Greek mythology. We hear about characters like Zeus and Ares all the time throughout the movie. Her whole frame of reference is built on Greek myths, and even her real-world name, Diana, is a reference to one of the most famous Greek goddesses. So off the bat, we know we're in the general Greasy area, but that doesn't help out as much as you might think. Ancient Greece wasn't just the Greece we see today. At its peak, Greek territory extended through the Middle East, all the way to India and south into northern Africa. So at first, it seems like Themyscira would be impossible to pinpoint, but lucky for us, there's something else that narrows the location way down. Steve's plane. Remember, Steve is in Turkey when he steals the plane that eventually crashes off the coast of Themyscira. Now, you might think that planes can fly anywhere, but that definitely wasn't the case in World War I. Remember, this is 1918. The Wright brothers flew the first plane ever in 1903, just 15 years earlier, and they flew it for literally 120 feet. And they were basically hovering 10 feet off the ground. That's not even an exaggeration, that's pretty accurate. So flying in a plane from World War I was basically like getting into a kite with an engine and hoping that it wouldn't fall out of the sky. Long story short, these things weren't going too far too fast. In this photo from the movie, we can confirm that Steve is flying in a Fokker E-3. Sorry, mature episode. A plane from Germany specifically supplied to Turkey in World War I starting in 1915. And that's a pretty important detail because that type of plane had a flight range of a little over 100 miles. Which isn't going to be getting him anywhere close to boating range for London. Ah, motherfucker! Even the best planes from World War I couldn't stay in the air on a single tank of gas for more than 3 hours at a time. And they also didn't fly over 90 miles per hour. Which means that at absolute best, when Steve hits the drink, he is absolutely under 300 miles from where he took off. So that begs the question, where's takeoff? Again, we're not told exactly where in Turkey the base is, but the two most plausible sites for the weapons facility would be Istanbul or Izmir. Now, Steve's not an idiot. Well, that's kinda up for debate, but let's say that he's not an idiot. He knew he wasn't making it all the way to London on a tank of gas, but he would have known that he could get to the Allied ships in the Mediterranean in a couple hundred miles. So, best case scenario, again, best case scenario, he's flying out of Izmir and can make it to about Crete, 270 miles away. The absolute maximum range that we just calculated for a plane in World War I. Now, Crete obviously isn't Themyscira because it was on the map and definitely occupied by not Amazons back in 1918, but lucky for us, there are literally hundreds of other tiny islands in and around that area, and the ones that weren't already owned by movie stars could easily have substituted for Themyscira. So to make it easy on ourselves, we'll use this general zone as Steve's crash point and say, well, now he has to go from here to get to London. Alright, Zach, I know it's been tough for you to keep up with all this geography so far, so here's a nice picture of a duck. Keep you interested. And here's that duck in a washed out color palette, and hey, let's add in some explosions. Here's a sky beam. Am I connecting with you now? Good, cause now we get to the good part. Or I should say the part that completely invalidates literally the rest of the movie. Because you can't sail from here all the way around to here over 3,300 miles in one night in 1918. Let me show you what I mean. Now, I'm no Jack Sparrow savvy, but I do know that the boat you're in has a lot to do with how fast you sail. The boat that Diana and Steve take is an ancient Greek sailing vessel, but that's bad news right off the bat. For one, ancient Greek boats were ridiculously slow. The fastest Greek ship is the trireme, which went 80 to 100 kilometers per day. And it was a huge ship, and it had 180 men rowing it. If that weren't ridiculous enough, Greek boats weren't even capable of changing the direction of the sails, which means they had almost no control over their direction if the wind was blowing the wrong way. Which, by the way, in the Mediterranean, it does all the time. This map shows you that the wind in the Mediterranean basically just goes around in little circles, which means in all likelihood, Steve and Diana would have washed up in Italy, or literally just gone around in circles between Egypt and Greece over and over again, because their freaking boat can't make a right turn. You know how there are all these stories about Odysseus and all those other ancient Greeks sailing around for weeks and washing up on random islands? Yeah, it's because their boats were basically glorified driftwood. If you keep this really accurate based on the boat they're using, getting to London would take a whopping 2 months. Let me say that again. 2 months. And we've given this thing the best case scenario based on all the factors that we've considered thus far. This means that the rest of the movie would have been over for almost 6 weeks by the time they just showed up in the harbor. In that circumstance, they might as well just have stayed home and had Steve discuss his above-average specimen some more with Amazon. But if we want to get really generous about this, we could say that somehow they have a more modern sail and can travel up to the speeds of America's Cup Racers, which is the oldest international sailing competition in history. These boats can go up to 34 miles an hour, though the fastest one on record went 55 miles per hour. Ooh boy, slow down! They're almost hitting the speed limit of a 2-lane state highway. If they're traveling at the speed of a sailboat in the America's Cup, they'll fare a lot better, finishing the trip in just about 4 days. I mean, still missing the vast majority of their own movie and showing up just in time for Dr. Poison's plan to gas London to take effect, but even if we give them the fastest sailboat in recorded history, the bestest sail rocket too, at 75 miles an hour, they'd still need about 2 full days to go from Crete to that port of London. And that is giving them advantages that are completely impossible. So is that it? Have we disproved this movie yet? No, of course not. If the comment section has shown me anything, is that it is literally impossible for me to do enough research and approach these topics from enough angles where all of you are convinced that I actually do research on these things. But I've already beaten you to the punch. If you're one of the better commenters who actually do leave thoughtful evidence against my theory, well, you would say, hey, when they arrive in London, Steve mentions that they got lucky and hitched a ride from a friendly tugboat.
We got lucky, we caught a ride. We made some good time.
Oh, happy day. Their travel problems are solved. Except not so fast there, Steve and Zach and comment section. Not even your magical tugboat of impossible travel will save you here. First off, tugboats in World War I were scarcer than you'd think. At the beginning of the war, the British Royal Navy only had 7, which they mostly bought from private tugboaters. Private tuggers. Oh, that's dirty. Professional tuggies. Oh, that's worse. Tugboaters it is. However you want to say it, the British Navy did build a couple dozen more tugboats before the end of the war, but the majority of them were harbor tugboats, meaning that they didn't go out into the high seas. The bigger deep ocean tugboats weren't even finished until 1919, and the farthest they went from London was this area here between England and France. That means at the very most, the tugboat could have pulled them the last 200 miles of their 3,300-mile sail at about 14 knots. 14 knots is about 16 miles per hour, or about the speed of an aggressive 12-year-old on a bicycle. Needless to say, Steve may be getting lucky after that dancing scene, but the tugboat ain't doing nothing for him. Trust me, Zach, I tried. I tried to figure out a way for this one to work for you. Through river systems, through alternate pathways, through canals that weren't even built yet, through faster boats. But it is time to face the truth. The way the movie is written, Diana and Steve would literally miss the whole rest of their own plot line, as well as the entire rest of World War I. Armistice happens while they're still sailing around. Dr. Poison's gas reignites tensions and kills thousands. Wonder Woman doesn't lead a one-woman charge in a bikini over the open trenches of Europe, or survive a literal firestorm without singeing a single hair. Ares ultimately wins as the war continues indefinitely and forever changes the course of history, and no matter how strong and independent Diana may be, not even she can change real-world geography. And now you know the real ending to Wonder Woman. Steve and Diana run out of food and water after 3 days because they didn't pack enough, and are forced to land their boat in Italy after traveling a solid 60 miles, and then they spend the rest of 1918 eating pasta and trying to figure out what the heck Amazonian dancing is. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.